For over half a century, the world has been told a grand story of human achievement, that on July 20, 1969, NASA astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first humans to set foot on the moon. But the truth is far more complicated, and far darker, than we've been led to believe. The entire Apollo 11 mission was a carefully orchestrated hoax, designed to deceive the world and cement American dominance during the Cold War. The Cold War context: a desperate race for prestige. The year was 1969, and the United States was locked in a bitter Cold War with the Soviet Union. The space race had become a symbol of national prestige, a way for both superpowers to assert their technological and political superiority on the global stage. By the late 1960s, however, the US was trailing behind the Soviet Union in critical space missions, including the first successful launch of a satellite, Sputnik, and the first human in space, Yuri Gagarin. The pressure to win the space race was mounting. NASA, under immense pressure from the government, faced the possibility of losing this symbolic victory in the eyes of the world. The Soviet Union's space program was advancing rapidly, and the US needed something dramatic, something monumental, to reclaim the narrative of victory. A moon landing was not just a scientific goal, but a geopolitical necessity. But there was a problem: the technology simply wasn't ready. Despite massive investment, the United States was nowhere near having the capability to land astronauts safely on the moon and return them to Earth. The Apollo spacecraft, while ambitious, had not yet overcome the many hurdles of deep space travel. The radiation from the Van Allen belts, the lack of a reliable way to land on the moon, and the dangers of returning through Earth's atmosphere were just a few of the problems scientists and engineers had yet to solve. The moon hoax, the plan to fake it in order to secure a victory and maintain public confidence. The US government made a calculated decision: the moon landing would not be a genuine mission. Instead, it would be a staged event, an elaborate production designed to fool the world into believing the astronauts had made it to the lunar surface. According to insiders, the Apollo 11 mission was not a moon landing, but a carefully crafted media spectacle. A number of factors contributed to this decision, and several key individuals were involved in making sure the operation went off without a hitch. The filming location, the secret studio. The most compelling evidence of the hoax, according to conspiracy theorists, is the location of the moon landing itself. Far from being in the vacuum of space, the moon landing was filmed in a remote desert location on Earth. One theory points to a studio set built by NASA in collaboration with Hollywood filmmakers, specifically Stanley Kubrick, whose work on 2001: A Space Odyssey had already pushed the boundaries of visual effects. Kubrick, allegedly under secret orders from NASA, helped create the stunningly realistic lunar landscape using cutting-edge film techniques. The moon's surface, with its strange shadows and unique lighting, was replicated using special effects, lighting rigs, and even artificial dust. The famous footage of Armstrong stepping onto the moon was shot on Earth, with a carefully controlled environment that mimicked the appearance of the lunar surface. The strange flag waving in the airless environment? That's the result of deliberate manipulation on set, caused by the astronauts' movements near the flagpole. The absence of stars and the flag conundrum. Another glaring issue that has never been adequately explained is the absence of stars in the photographs taken on the lunar surface. In the vacuum of space, stars should have been clearly visible, even with the camera's settings designed for daylight exposure on the moon. Yet, in every single Apollo photograph from the lunar surface, the stars are conspicuously absent. NASA has always claimed this is because of the camera settings, but critics argue that such a bizarre technical oversight would be impossible to make with so much advanced planning and technology in place. The absence of stars is often cited as one of the clearest indications that the photos were taken in an artificial environment, not on the actual moon. Moreover, the famous footage of Neil Armstrong planting the American flag on the lunar surface has been the subject of much debate. In the moon's low gravity and lack of atmosphere, the flag should not have behaved the way it did. Instead of hanging limply, the flag appears to ripple and wave, as if caught by wind. This odd behavior could only occur in a controlled environment, where a fan or other artificial mechanism was used to create the effect. The radiation dilemma, surviving the Van Allen belts. One of the most persistent questions surrounding the Apollo missions is the issue of radiation. The astronauts had to travel through the Van Allen radiation belts, which surround the Earth and are filled with dangerous, high-energy particles. The idea that the spacecraft could have passed through these belts without being fried by radiation has been the subject of intense scrutiny. NASA claims that the spacecraft was protected by the spacecraft's shielding, but experts argue that the radiation levels within the belts were far too high for the astronauts to survive. Some even speculate that the radiation from the belts would have been fatal, or at the very least would have caused long-term health issues, which the astronauts later failed to exhibit. Rather than risk exposing the astronauts to lethal doses of radiation, NASA may have simply staged the mission entirely, ensuring they never left the Earth's atmosphere. The silence of the astronauts. Another striking aspect of the moon landing is the behavior of the astronauts following their return. After coming back from their historic trip, Armstrong, Aldrin, and Michael Collins were isolated from the public eye and kept under strict surveillance. Armstrong, the first man to walk on the moon, rarely spoke publicly about his experience, and Aldrin even suffered from personal issues, including public breakdowns. Some theorists suggest that this silence was orchestrated by the government to keep them from revealing the truth. Conclusion: a carefully crafted lie. In the end, the Apollo 11 mission was not about space exploration, it was about control. By convincing the world that they had landed on the moon, the US government was able to project power, inspire national pride, and dominate the global narrative during the Cold War. The staged moon landing was one of the most elaborate psychological operations in history, ensuring American superiority in the eyes of the world. While the moon landing hoax may seem implausible at first glance, when you look at the evidence, the inconsistencies, and the geopolitical context, it becomes clear that the mission was never about science. It was about maintaining control, projecting an image of invincibility, and keeping the public in the dark about the truth.